we'll bring it back around to the Florida quarterback here, Zachary Grader, with a good question. But first, he says, it's taken me too long to become an official member of Gators Breakdown. I've been following you and Will since the beginning. This is Zach Grader. We hung out a couple of times, most recently at the tailgate for the Anthony Richardson year Missouri win. Came over with my dad and uncle from Ohio. He said, like me, I know you're a big Josh Pate guy too, so let's play the what if game. What if DJ Lagway has 40 touchdowns and under 10 interceptions this year? What do you think the Gators season looks like with those numbers? Go Gators. Hope to link up again soon. So, well, I wanted to bring some recent examples into play here. First of all, 40 and 10, that's DJ Lagway in New York, by the way. So if Lagway has those numbers, he's firmly in the Heisman conversation. But I'm about to go through some other quarterbacks for you, and you will see for sure that's Heisman-worthy conversation. But it won't necessarily translate into everything we want if Florida doesn't get better on defense. And this is where I was going to come around on defense, Will, is because 40 and 10 can be great, but that defense has still got to come around. Go to last year. Cam Ward, just last year, 39 and 7. 39 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. So he's right at that 40-10 mark. Miami's defense, 68th in scoring defense, 25.3 points per game. Total defense, they were 27th, 327.2 yards per game. But it was their defense that really kind of wasted Cam Ward. Let's bring it home, Will. Kyle Trask in 2020, 43 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. That one hits home. That was a 40-10 year. Florida scoring defense, 74th in the country, 30.8 points per game. Total defense, 83rd, 428 yards per game. That Gator defense was giving up. So what I'm trying to say here is 40-10 does not mean Florida can go out go and win. If this defense doesn't get better, if they don't take steps, you're going to waste a 40-10 year. Mac Jones in 2020, 41 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Bama wins the national title that year. Their scoring defense, 13th in the country, 19.4. Their total defense, 32nd in the country, 352.2 yards per game. And we'll go into your boy Joe Burrow in 2019. 60 touchdowns.
That's it.
Yeah. Sorry, you could overcome about 80 defense with 60 touchdowns, but 60 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Their scoring defense, LSU that year, 31st, 21.9 points per game. Total defense, also 31st, in 343.5 yards per game. If he was a 40-10 guy, they may not win the national title.
8-4.
Yeah.
8-4.
He had to go 60-6 to win the national title. To put that in comparison, last year, Florida, 42nd in scoring defense, 23.1 points per game. Total defense was 75th, about 377 yards a game given up. 40 and 10 ain't going to be good enough with that defense.
Nope.
So for Lagway, yeah, he could be in New York. But the question was, what does the season look like? It's going to be a disappointing season if the defense doesn't improve, even with a 40-10 year from Lagway.
Yeah, so I think it sort of depends on improve from what, right? Like you cited the entire season statistics.
Yeah.
And I think you got to start looking at what happened after the bye week. After the bye week, the defense was much, much better. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the last 4 or 5 games, actually, if you look at the last 6 games minus Texas, so, and you do have to eliminate the Texas game in order to make this case. I realize that. But the defense was significantly improved. And so if you start looking at what it was on the second half, it starts to give you hope for what it might be with Lagway at 40 and 10. But here's the reality. In college football, 40 and 10 really isn't that special. Like, you're citing a guy a year who's putting up 40 and 10. And I'll tell you, Jaden Daniels was way better than 40 and 10 a couple of years ago. And his team goes 10 and 3 because the LSU defense was as bad as Florida's defense that year. And so, yes, you were going to have – so here's what I will say is that 60 and 6 for Burrow back in 2019 was able to paper over an awful lot of stuff that didn't necessarily go right for Mr. Orgeron there, and maybe some interesting decisions that he made on decisions to punt or go forward or play calling or whatever. The other thing is
the defense that got better as the season went on. I remember watching that team that year, and there were some questions about that defense. So they kind of clamped down and got better as the season went on.
Well, the other thing is that team had Jamar Chase and also George Jefferson at wide receiver,
Clyde
right?
Edwards-Helaire too, right?
Yeah, I mean, so not only guys like I left Hilaire out because I'm not like those guys aren't just guys who like were good college receivers. Those are guys who have become the elite of the elite in the NFL. And so if you're asking me if Florida's defense is bad, what does the offense have to do? Vernell Brown or Dallas Wilson have to be essentially Jeremiah Smith. Yeah. Like they have to be transformative true freshmen at the wide receiver position in order to support Lagway. And I don't.
And J. Michael Sturdivant and Trey Wilson need to, they need to be counted on as well.
They need to.
But I agree with you. One of those freshmen is going to have to do that. But it's going to have to pair it with those guys doing something as well.
Yeah. I don't think Wilson or Sturdivant have the profile of what's really necessary to overcome a defense that is not very good, right? I think that neither one of those guys is Jamar Chase. Dallas Wilson has an opportunity to potentially be as good as a guy like Jamar Chase. And so if you've got a guy as good as Jamar Chase or Jordan Jefferson out there on the outside who's that threat, well, now that opens up all sorts of stuff for the guys inside. That opens up all sorts of other opportunities. The tight ends, you send Hayden Hansen streaking down the center of the field. Nobody pays any attention to him because they're paying too much attention to the guys on the outside. So there's stuff they can do on the offensive side of the ball to potentially get there. But if that happens, if Dallas Wilson ends up like one of the best players in the country, Lagway's going 55-9, right? It's like, and that's what's going to take. 40-10 with this defense the way it's been isn't going to be enough. So yeah, I mean, you're going to need Castell and Thornton, like I said earlier, to really step up. And I think one of the cool parts, and this is something that we did highlight in the magazine, is one of the things that Ron Roberts did was he allowed his linebackers to play free in a way that Austin Armstrong did not over the first 3 games of the year and the year prior. And so that's something that I'm really interested in looking at, especially early in the year with a couple of those road games, is how active are the linebackers, Childs and Graham and your favorite pup Howard, like how active are those guys and how into the game plan are they? Like, are they actually taking advantage of their skills or are they just sort of there? There's some opportunities for Florida to take a step forward, no doubt, on the defensive side of the ball. But 40-10 and a trip to New York, that's all great for Lagway. But like you said, I mean, look, top 10 defenses are the ones that make the playoff. And so if that's the goal, if the goal is to make the playoff, we don't need Lagway to go 40-10. He can go 30-5. Yeah. And as long as the defense is much, much improved, I think you move the meter more that way than just necessarily having an unstoppable offense. Though that's fun to watch too. I mean, let's just do both. We don't have.
Yeah. I mean, I take a Cam Ward like 39-7. I mean, but you get Miami defense. That should have been a playoff team. I mean, it should have been a playoff team.
Well, even then, though, and I will say this is something where I think Lagway has at least an advantage in terms of there's something about that kid, especially when things are getting tight. Like I think about the throw against Tennessee. He had no business making that throw, given how bad he had been the entire second half. And he still got the moxie to make that throw. And Ward has moxie to make a throw, but I don't know that it was always the right one down the stretch. And so Miami was in these games where it was just a one-score game constantly, week after week after week. And some of the time that was because the defense was faltering, but some of the time that was because the offense wasn't necessarily getting the job done. And so, you settle for field goals, and it opens
that Syracuse game, they jumped up big and then just hit a wall. Yeah. And Syracuse comes back and wins the game.
So that is the one stat that I would look for on Lagway's side is not necessarily – it's funny because like the Kentucky game last year, Florida runs away with that game, and Lagway doesn't throw a touchdown pass because every pass he throws, Badger got tackled at the 1, and then they just handed it to Ball, and he ran in for a touchdown. But the thing that I think we started to see as the season started to develop after Lagway came back from the hamstring injury is that Florida started to get a little bit more efficient in the red zone. And so, normally red zone efficiency kind of swings pretty wildly. So it's not a stat I put a ton of I don't usually put a ton of weight into it. But I think for Florida specifically, to get to where they need to get to, and especially in the big games, I don't think they're going to be able to settle for field goals. So Lagway might be able to go up and down the field against the Sharks and against USF. The question is going to be against Texas. You're only going to get a certain number of opportunities to cash in. And is it 28 when you've got 4 red zone opportunities? Or is it 12 when you've got 4 red zone opportunities? And I think that's going to make or break some of the big games. So as much as I don't typically look at red zone conversion percentage, I think what you're going to want to do is look, especially in the big games, and see how many points did Florida leave out there when they had scoring opportunities. Collegefootballstats.com has a great stat where they look at scoring opportunities. So it's every time you're inside the 40-yard line, and they track that throughout the year. And Florida 2 years ago especially was really bad at when they got inside the 40. They got stopped a lot, and that's one of the things I think people complain about when it comes to Billy Napier's play calling. So how creative will he be in terms of freeing up his guys once they get in the red zone? I mean, think about the Tennessee game last year, right? I mean, if Florida converts 2 of those opportunities in the first half, that's a completely different ball game. But instead, it was just, hey, look, there's my foot, bam, like the entire half.
And the Ole Miss game is the one that comes to mind to me in the red zone. Florida got creative. It was a swing pass out to Jaden Ball, who breaks tackles and scores, and then it's a Montrell Johnson wildcat run for a touchdown.
And Ole Miss wasn't, right? Ole Miss wasn't creative. They gave it to that big tight end and said run, and Florida's like, all right, we know that's coming. We'll at least fire for it. So, I'm not sure I'm going to have a whole lot to complain about if Lagway goes 40-10.
Oh heck no!
Like, it's still going to be a boatload of fun, right?
Yeah.
And I think
now what I don't want is 4 versus Long Island, 5 versus USF, and then it's
1 touchdown, 3 interceptions against Georgia.
That would be about the only complaint of a 40-10. But I think for the most part, and I'm kind of joking along there. If he goes 40-10, it's more than likely going to be a really good 40-10.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because we've jumped so quickly because of the hope of Lagway. Mm-hmm. Like, this is different than like 2020 when we saw Trask do well in 19, but he still needed to take a significant leap. And the question was, could he? I think we all believe that Lagway has that jump in him and to do it this year.